Have you ever felt the weight of a divine echo in your childhood memories? Those moments that seem too heavy, too profound for a young soul to carry? They whisper a truth that perhaps you're only now beginning to understand. Think back to those early years. While others played without care, you might have found yourself standing at life's deeper waters, facing waves that seemed to crash harder against your shores than others. But here's the profound truth that's beginning to emerge. Those waves weren't meant to break you. They were meant to shape you. In the sacred words of Jeremiah 105, we find a revelation that illuminates our past. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. These aren't just ancient words on a page. They're a key to understanding your unique journey. Every challenge, every unusual sensitivity, every moment when you felt different, they were brushstrokes in a divine masterpiece that's still being painted. Today we're going to explore the sacred signs that marked you from your earliest years. These aren't just coincidences or random hardships. They're divine markers, carefully placed along your path. Like a master artisan selecting specific tools to craft something extraordinary, God was already working in your life, building qualities that couldn't be formed in comfort and creating strength that couldn't be forged in ease. As we unveil these signs together, I invite you to join in this journey of recognition. When something stirs your soul, when a memory surfaces that makes your heart whisper yes, share your testimony in the comments below. Perhaps it's a verse that carried you through dark times, or a simple truth like, "His purpose guides my path," or "My struggles were His stepping stones." Your words might be the light that helps another soul recognize their own divine marking. Let's begin with the first sign, one that many of us carried without understanding its profound purpose. And one, the early bearer of burdens. Our first sign speaks to those early chapters of your story, chapters that might have seemed unfairly weighted with adult-sized challenges. It's about recognizing that what felt like life's uneven distribution of burdens was actually divine distribution of purpose. Perhaps you were that child who learned to read the silent language of adult worry before you learned to read books. While your peers were concerned with playground politics, you were navigating real-world challenges, maybe stretching a week's groceries into two, being the emotional anchor in a storm of family struggles, or carrying responsibilities that made you feel decades older than your actual age. Some of you moved through schools like passing shadows, never quite settling before another change uprooted you. Others faced learning challenges that made every day feel like climbing a mountain with weights on your shoulders. Or perhaps you were that child who understood financial scarcity intimately, not just through empty fridges, but through the heavy sighs of parents trying their best. But here's where divine purpose reveals itself. Romans 5-4 illuminates this journey perfectly. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. Those early struggles weren't random acts of misfortune. They were sacred training grounds. Each challenge was carefully measured, each burden precisely weighted to develop in you something extraordinary. Think of it like this. While others were building sandcastles, you were learning to build foundations that could withstand storms. Your early trials weren't punishments, they were preparation for carrying light into someone else's darkness later in life. Every problem you solved, every adult situation you navigated, every moment you found strength beyond your years, these were divine tutorials in resilience. Those who recognize this sign early often share a unique trait. They emerge from their trials not bitter, but better, not weaker, but wiser, not hardened against the world, but softened toward others' struggles. But these early burdens weren't the only markers of divine purpose in your life. As you carried these weights, something else was developing within you, a gift that would touch countless lives. Sign 2, the natural light bearer. This second sign manifests in a profound paradox. Despite carrying your own heavy burdens, you became a source of light for others. It's as though your personal struggles lit a lamp within you that others naturally sought out. Remember those moments when friends, family, even strangers would inexplicably open their hearts to you? While other children were absorbed in their own worlds, you found yourself being the one others turned to with their troubles. Your presence seemed to create a sanctuary where truth could be spoken and burdens could be shared. Isaiah 61 speaks to this directly. Arise, shine, for your light has come and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Even in your darkest moments, something in you radiated hope to others. You didn't just listen, you understood. You didn't just hear, you held space for others' pain. This wasn't just natural empathy. It was a divine gift being cultivated through your own trials. Perhaps you noticed how teachers would trust you with responsibilities beyond your years, or how younger children would naturally gravitate to your protective presence. Even adults would sometimes look to you with a peculiar respect, as if recognizing an old soul dwelling in young eyes. This gift came with its own weight. Being a light bearer isn't always easy. Sometimes you felt the burden of others' trust, carrying secrets and sorrows that weren't your own. Yet somehow, even then, you found the strength to keep shining, to keep holding space for others' healing, even as you navigated your own path. While being a light for others marked you clearly, there was another sign even more profound, one that spoke directly to your connection with divine guidance. Sign number 3, the vision carrier. This third sign manifests in ways that often made you question your own understanding. From your earliest years, you experienced something that set you apart, a divine frequency of guidance that others seemed to miss entirely. Remember those moments when you just knew something was about to happen? Not the simple intuition that everyone experiences, but a deeper knowing that felt like it came from somewhere beyond yourself. Perhaps you had dreams that weren't just dreams, they were windows through which God spoke to you, showing you things that would later unfold in ways that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. Daniel 1:17 speaks to this gift. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Like Daniel, you might have found yourself receiving understanding in ways that transcended normal learning, insights that seemed to drop into your spirit directly from above. These visions weren't always grand revelations. Sometimes they came as quiet warnings, a persistent urge to pray for someone who you later discovered was in crisis. Other times they manifested as crystal clear knowing about decisions that others struggled to make. You might have even experienced moments when God showed you glimpses of your future purpose, like seeds of destiny planted in your young heart. But carrying this gift wasn't always easy. Like Joseph in his youth, sharing what you saw or knew could lead to misunderstanding. Perhaps you learned to keep certain things quiet, holding them in your heart like Mary did with the mysteries surrounding her son. Yet these experiences, these divine downloads of insight and foresight, were preparing you for a larger purpose, one that required you to see beyond the visible, to carry visions of hope into spaces where others saw only darkness. While you carried visions of divine purpose, another sign was quietly manifesting, one that spoke through the trust of the most vulnerable. Sign number 4, the natural peace bearer. This fourth sign reveals itself in one of the most profound ways, through the instinctive trust of those whose hearts speak louder than words. From your earliest years, you may have noticed something remarkable. Troubled souls, both human and animal, seem to find sanctuary in your presence. Remember those moments that others found mysterious? How that aggressive stray dog would suddenly soften under your gentle gaze? Or how that fearful rescue animal would find peace in your presence when it shied away from everyone else? It wasn't about having any special training or technique. There was something in your spirit that they could sense, a divine peace that transcended human understanding. The same gift manifested with children, particularly those carrying hidden hurts. Perhaps you noticed how the troubled child that teachers struggled to reach would quietly sit beside you at lunch, or how younger children, especially those bearing invisible wounds, would seek you out on the playground, finding comfort in your mere presence. Even when you felt uncertain or overwhelmed yourself, something in you radiated stability that others desperately needed. Psalms 34:18 illuminates this gift. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Through you, even as a child, God was extending this divine comfort to his hurting creatures. You became a living testament to his gentle touch, a channel of peace in spaces of chaos. This wasn't about having all the answers. You were just a child yourself. But God had planted within you a rare quality, the ability to bring heaven's peace into earth's storms. Like a lighthouse on a dark shore, your presence became a beacon of safety for wounded hearts and troubled spirits. Those who carry this sign often don't realize its significance until years later, yet every time a hurting soul found rest in your presence, every time an anxious heart calmed at your touch, you were manifesting a divine gift, one that our broken world desperately needs. While your presence brought peace to the hurting, there was another sign emerging, one that spoke of leadership beyond your years. Sign number 5. The Kingdom Builder. This fifth sign manifests in a way that often confuses adults around you. How could someone so young carry such natural authority? Not the kind of authority that demands attention, but the kind that draws others into a greater vision without even trying. Even in your earliest years, you showed glimpses of what Scripture calls servant leadership. Like young David, who led not through force but through divine purpose, you found yourself naturally gathering others toward positive change. Remember those moments when your ideas somehow transformed ordinary play into meaningful missions? When your gentle suggestions could turn chaos into order? Proverbs 20:11 tells us, "Even small children are known by their actions, by whether their conduct is pure and right." Your actions, even then, were building something larger than yourself. Perhaps you were the one who naturally mediated conflicts on the playground, or the child who could unite different groups toward a common goal. You didn't seek these roles, they sought you. But this gift wasn't just about leadership. It was about building bridges between divided friends, building safe spaces where others could thrive, building hope in situations where others saw only problems. Like Nehemiah, who rebuilt walls while building community, you had an innate ability to see both the physical and spiritual needs of those around you. What others saw as simple childhood activities, God was using as training ground for kingdom work. Every time you stood up for someone weaker, every moment you helped create harmony from discord, you were practicing the sacred art of kingdom building. These weren't just random childhood experiences. They were early manifestations of a divine calling to build spaces where God's presence could dwell among his people. While your spirit carried the gift of building kingdom connections, there was another mark that set you apart, a profound sensitivity to what was real and true. Sign number 6. The Truth Bearer. This sixth sign reveals itself in the way your young heart resonated deeply with truth and recoiled from dishonesty. From your earliest years, you carried an unusual sensitivity that others often couldn't understand, a divine tuning fork that vibrated painfully in the presence of deception. Remember those moments when you witnessed dishonesty, perhaps a simple white lie between adults, a broken promise that others easily dismissed, or a fabricated story that everyone else seemed to accept without question? While others could brush these moments aside, you felt them deeply, like spiritual paper cuts that left unseen wounds. Psalm 51:6 speaks directly to this gift. Surely you desire truth in the inner parts. You teach me wisdom in the inmost place. This wasn't just about having a strong moral compass. It was about carrying God's heart for truth in your own. Like a spiritual seismograph, you could detect even the smallest tremors of dishonesty in your environment. Perhaps you found yourself in situations where speaking truth came at a cost. Maybe you were that child who couldn't pretend everything was fine when it wasn't, or who felt physically ill in environments where facades and pretense ruled. This sensitivity might have seemed like a burden then, making you feel out of place in a world that often preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. But what felt like an oversensitivity was actually a divine gift, a precious ability to recognize and uphold truth in a world that increasingly treats it as optional. God was cultivating in you a spirit like Daniel's, who remained uncompromising in his integrity even when surrounded by a culture of compromise. Your deep hurt at dishonesty wasn't weakness, it was evidence of carrying a piece of God's heart for truth and authenticity. As we reach our final and perhaps most profound sign, we discover what all these other markers were preparing you for, a calling that would require warrior spirit. Sign number 7, the early warrior spirit. This 7th sign speaks to something deep in your spirit, a divine strength that manifested long before you understood its purpose. From your earliest years, you carried the heart of a warrior, not in aggression, but in an unshakable resolve to stand for what's right, even when you stood alone. Remember those moments when you faced choices that tested your young soul? While others chose the easy path, something in you chose what was right, even when it cost you friendships, even when it meant standing alone on the playground, even when it would have been simpler to look the other way. Like young David facing his giants, you found yourself confronting challenges that seemed far too big for your age. Timothy 1:7 illuminates this gift. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline. This warrior spirit wasn't about physical strength. It was about carrying a courage that couldn't be explained by your years. You might have been the smallest in your class, the quietest in the room, but when matters of justice and truth arose, an inexplicable boldness would rise within you. This sign often manifested in spiritual battles that others couldn't see. Perhaps you faced unusual challenges to your peace of mind, wrestling with fears, anxieties, or dark thoughts that seemed beyond your years. Like Timothy, who was young yet called to lead, you might have found yourself fighting battles in the spiritual realm while your peers were simply playing in the physical one. The warrior's mark showed itself in other ways too. When friends were being bullied, you couldn't stay silent. When lies were being spread, you spoke truth. When others were afraid, something in you stood tall. This wasn't about being fearless. Often you were terrified, but about having access to a strength beyond your own, a divine courage that would rise up exactly when needed. Isaiah 41:10 speaks directly to this experience. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. How many times did you feel this promise in action? When you should have been overwhelmed, somehow you found strength. When you should have broken, somehow you stood firm. But this warrior spirit came with its own unique challenges. You might have faced opposition that seemed disproportionate to your age, as if darkness itself recognized the light you carried and rose up to challenge it. Like Joseph, your own family might have misunderstood you. Like David, your motives might have been questioned. Yet something in you kept standing, kept fighting, kept believing. This wasn't just about being strong. It was about learning early that true strength comes from surrender to something greater than yourself. Every battle you faced was training ground. Every opposition was preparation. Every moment of standing alone was building in you a strength that our world desperately needs. Those who carry this sign often discover later in life that their early battles were preparation for greater purposes. Every time you chose courage over comfort, truth over acceptance, right over easy, you were being shaped into a warrior for God's kingdom. Someone who could stand firm when others falter, speak truth when others stay silent, and carry hope into battles that others fear to face. As we stand here, looking back at these 7 divine markers, a greater picture begins to emerge. These signs, the burdens you carried, the light you bore for others, the visions you received, the peace you brought to troubled souls, the kingdom spaces you built, the truth you upheld, and the warrior spirit that rose within you, they were never random. They were divine threads carefully woven into the tapestry of your earliest years, creating a pattern that only now becomes clear. Remember, those early burdens that felt too heavy, they were building strength for a divine purpose. That inexplicable ability to comfort others despite your own struggles, It was God's light flowing through you. Those moments of supernatural knowing, they were heaven's whispers to your spirit. The way troubled souls found peace in your presence, that was God's heart beating through yours. Your natural ability to unite and build, it was kingdom authority being cultivated in you. That deep resonance with truth that sometimes hurt, it was God's standard being written on your heart, and that warrior spirit that rose up when needed, it was heaven's courage being forged in your soul. Jeremiah 29:11 takes on new meaning now. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Looking back, you can see it. Every challenge, every gift, every sensitivity was part of a greater plan. You weren't just growing up. You were being prepared. Those moments that made you feel different, they were actually making you ready. If you've recognized yourself in these signs, understand this. Your early experiences weren't just chapters in your past. They're keys to understanding your present purpose. God doesn't waste pain, doesn't squander gifts, and doesn't make mistakes in His preparation. Every tear, every trial, every triumph was shaping you for such a time as this. You were never meant to be ordinary. The very things that made you feel different were divine markers of an extraordinary calling. And now, as you stand here, recognizing these signs from your past, perhaps you're beginning to understand. You weren't just chosen. You were carefully, purposefully, and lovingly crafted for a purpose that's still unfolding. If these signs have awakened something in your spirit, if you're beginning to see your past experiences in a new light, share your story in the comments below. Write a verse that speaks to your journey, share a moment when one of these signs manifested in your life, or simply acknowledge the divine purpose you're beginning to recognize. Your testimony might be the key that helps another chosen one recognize their own divine markings. Remember, you weren't marked by accident, you were chosen by design.